In this video, let's make some ribbon weaving lavender sachets. You don't have to put lavender in them, but it certainly makes them nicer. So what will you need? You need some backing cotton. So I've made mine 5.5 inches square. You don't have to, but if you want it to be exactly the same, you do. And you're going to need some interfacing, the iron-on kind. It's important it's got the gluey side because that's what we're going to glue our ribbons to. And then you're going to want your ribbons. And these need to be 6 inches long. Mine are 1 inch wide and I've used 5 of each, but obviously if you use narrower ribbon, you're going to need more of them. And if you want to put a frill on, you're going to need some lace or similar to go around the edge. And in my opinion, that really does make them very pretty. And then you can get started. I'm using a padded ironing pad, I suppose, because I need to pin to it. I'd normally use an ironing board and that's sufficient, but I find it very difficult to film on. So make sure you place your interfacing with the glue side up. We're placing the ribbon onto the gluey side. Choose one of your colours and place a piece of ribbon directly in the middle of the interfacing and pin it at either end. You'll see it's slightly longer than the interfacing, and so you can pin it just beyond. And then take the other colour and put it the other way in the middle. So you've basically made a cross. And then take one of your colours and decide whether you want to weave up or down first. Now, it really doesn't matter. All that matters is that you follow your routine of weaving. So that yellow one's gone under the green. So this green one has to go over the top of the green one that's across. And pin it in place. And then we'll put one horizontally. So this one, because the green goes under, the yellow is going to have to go over the green and then under the yellow. And pin it at either end. And you can see what matters is that it's exactly the opposite of whatever it's next to. And you just keep going. It doesn't matter what order you do these in, so do what suits you. So I'm just going to do a vertical one, but you can see that I'm weaving it in and out. And just make sure you're thorough that they really do all weave correctly. Now, if you're getting near the edge and you're having a bit of trouble, just take one of your pins out, release it. Then you can get your ribbon in and then pop the pin back in. You'll see that I do some horizontal, some vertical. It's just because I find it easier to see it building up and that it's looking how I want it to look. And you can see just sometimes a little bit tricky to get them in. And you need to make sure that your ribbons are just lying next to one another. You don't want at the ends one of them overlapping the other. But you will have a little chance to sort that out before you glue it down. So you can see I still need another one. So I'm just going to do that one. They get a little bit tricky at the edge. And there we go. Pin it in place, and I've got all my ribbons woven and my patterns there. Now you can see at the corner I've got little squares where I've still got the glue sticking up, and you need to be very careful if you've any glue on show, because we are going to use the iron to fasten that ribbon down. So I can't stress enough, be careful, you don't want it on the bottom of your iron. So take a pin off, perhaps 2, and just put the iron on the very ends. You're just making sure they're secure. We're not gluing the whole ribbon down at this point. If you find it's not gluing, you may need to increase the temperature. But because you're dealing with ribbon, I really recommend starting with a very low temperature and perhaps hold the iron on for a bit longer. You don't want to melt any of your ribbon or damage it. So you're probably going to have to experiment a bit. If you're nervous, have a piece of ribbon at the side and try it before you start on your actual cushion. But you can see I'm just working my way up that side, checking all the time that the ends have just glued down. All we're trying to achieve is that they'll stay there while we turn the whole thing over. So then once you've got one side secure, work your way around to another one. And you can see I'm just holding the iron in place until the glue has melted and stuck the interface into the ribbon. And then that final edge You can go back as many times as you like just to make sure they are secure. And then once they're all secure, you'll be able to lift it, turn it over and iron the whole thing. And this is where you're really gluing it down forever. So take your time, hold the iron as long as it takes for the glue to melt. You don't want any steam ever during this process. You're just melting the glue. And then you need to wait for it all to cool and the glue to set. And there you've got the front of your cushion or your sachet, depending what you're making. Then if you're putting some trim on, which I really recommend, it's time to sew it on. So make sure the fancy edge that's going out for everyone to see is facing into the square. So the edge that's running along the edge of the square is the edge you're not going to see. You also need to make sure as you're pinning that your pins are where you're going to sew and that they go through the interfacing as well as the ribbon to make this nice and secure. When you get to the corner, simply turn the corner and pin the other side. When it comes to sewing, you have to be very careful with the corners not to catch those in, but at the moment it's quite straightforward just to pin round. So make sure your pins, I'm going to repeat that, are lying exactly where you want to sew on both the ribbon and the lace. If you're enjoying this video, please give me a thumbs up below so it'll spread to more people and everyone can be making their ribbon weaving. Now when you get back to where you started, it's up to you, but I tend to cut my lace a little bit longer so there's a small overlap. Just make sure I don't end up with a gap. And then once you're happy with it, it's over to the machine. Just do a quick check and make sure before you set off that your pins are exactly where you want to sew. So over at the machine, just pick a side and set off. You don't need to reverse because you're going to come back over that bit. And just work slowly down, taking your pins out as you go. Now as you approach the corner, take care. Get yourself right to the corner, put your needle down, lift the foot and turn. But as you can see, you need to make sure that lace is out of the way. You don't want to catch it down, otherwise it won't stick out nicely at the end. You won't get that effect on your cushion that you're hoping for. So repeat that for each of your corners. And you can see at each corner, I'm taking my time to move that lace out of the way. And then when you get back to where you start, make sure you run over the stitching you started with, do a little reverse, and then it will be secure. So you probably find now you've got plenty of ribbon that you can trim off those edges because it was a little bit longer than the interfacing. So just trim those off. If you want to, you can trim the corners, but you don't need to because we will be doing that right at the end. I am just get rid of a little bit of the bulk now, but you will get another opportunity. So now we're going to sew the back to the cushion, and those corners are the thing you have to be really careful with. So you're placing your back onto the front of the cushion, but you need to just squash your lace so that it lies inside carefully and you're not catching any of it in your pins. And the same as before, make sure your pins are exactly where you want to sew. So just start on one side, it doesn't matter which, pin your way along, and at the corner make sure that lace is in, folded in carefully and can't get caught in your stitching. And just work your way all the way around. But once you've got all the way around, remember that when you stitch this, you need to leave an opening to turn it through. I really do recommend leaving a good 2 or 3 inches to turn it through because your ribbon will be quite stiff and it's got that interfacing on it. So you might want to mark it now to make sure you do leave that opening for you. Otherwise, just be careful to make sure you do. So you can see I'm just checking that those pins are in exactly the right place so I catch the lace everywhere and it's going to look great. So it's back to the machine to sew our way round, but not all the way around this time. And remember, we're sewing through all the layers. So wherever you are going to start, and remember you're leaving a gap, you want to go forwards and reverse this time because you want a nice secure end. Now you'll notice before I come to every corner, I lift the corner of the fabric and check that the lace isn't going to get caught in. That's experience. I have done this before and caught the lace in, no matter how careful I've been pinning it. So I always just check. You don't want to be having to unpick when you've sewn ribbon. It's not pretty. So just do that moment's check and make sure your lace is out of the way. And then just work your way all the way around. And remember, don't go back to where you started. Leave your 2 to 3 inches to turn your cushion through. So then a little reverse to make sure that one's secure. And it should be sewn. So then clip those corners. Obviously we've got some more fabric there now, so even if you've already clipped them, you're probably going to clip them again. It just makes for a better finish when you turn it through. And then turn the whole lot through. Now it's going to be stiff, so just be careful and just take your time. You don't want to damage anything as you're going. And then it's about getting those corners poked through. So you might want to use a chopstick or a blunt end of the pencil, but you can also use your lace to gently pull those corners, and I do say gently. But you should have something that's looking like your lavender sachet or cushion, depending what you're making. So now it's time to fill it. So whether you're going to use lavender or not, you want to get some filling in there and really try and get it into those corners, and then add as much filling as you want. So if you want a really roughy tufty cushion, you want it quite thick, then put loads in. If you want quite a slim cushion, then put less in. Now if you want to put some lavender in, I recommend putting it in an organza bag and placing that in, or like I'm doing here, I'm just placing some inside some wadding and wrapping it in there and placing it in. It's just so that it's a little bit nicer than it just being pressed against the fabric on the back. So as I say, put as much filling in as you want, check it, then when you're happy, it's time to sew the opening closed. That's not a difficult thing to do, and you can just do it by hand with a little ladder stitch or slip stitch, depending what you call it. But you are just going to have to take a little bit of time of making sure you line everything up properly so that you get a nice finish. So once you're happy, it's time to get those edges together. So the backing from your cushion, you just need to fold where that seam would be if it was sewn. And then you need to do the same with the other, to just fold it in and make sure you're catching everything in as you ought to. So make sure that lace is caught in and the ribbon is folded in on the front. So spend a little bit of time just looking front and back. And then you want a needle and thread with a small knot at one end. And then you're going to take the needle inside the cushion so that the knot disappears inside there, and then come up to that top edge that you folded right at one end on the back of the cushion. And then what you do is you work your way along the whole gap, taking a little bit from the front and a little bit from the back. Now take care to make sure you don't just catch the lace. Make sure you go through some of the ribbon from the front. It's just going to make it stronger. Just sewing to the lace is going to make it very weak seam. So it's a little bit of the backing and then a little bit of the front. And you just repeat that all the way along. Little tiny stitches. The smaller your stitches, the tidier that seam will be, and no one will ever know it's there. So just work your way along, keep refolding if you need to, just cutting off the thread that's come through. And then when you get to the other end, for the final stitch, just do your stitch as normal, then thread your needle through the loop and it forms a small knot. Then put your needle into where you're sewing and out of the back of the cushion, and that'll just stop the knot pulling undone. And then cut off your thread and you're finished. Well done, congratulations. Enjoy your ribbon woven lavender sachet, and thank you for watching.